Welcome to Our Past and the Way Forward: Catholics, Antisemitism, My Polish Family, and the Holocaust. My mother, a Catholic, grew up in Suwalki, Poland under Nazi occupation. Her father was convicted of treason against the Third Reich for his underground activities, including helping smuggle his Jewish neighbors into Lithuania. Despite this, my grandfather was an anti-Semite before and after World War II. I've spent much of my life wondering why an anti-Semite would risk his life and the lives of his family to save the lives of Jews in his city. For a time, I didn't believe my family's stories of heroism. I've wondered what role did his Catholic upbringing play in my grandfather's anti-Semitism, and what role it played in laying the foundation of hate that would become the Holocaust. What Catholic teachings were anti-Jewish, and how do we, Christian Catholics, move forward? Pope Francis said, even recently, we have witnessed a barbaric resurgence of cases of anti-Semitism. Once more, I firmly condemn every form of anti-Semitism. Pope Francis also said, the path that the Church has walked with you, the ancient people of the covenant, rejects every form of anti Judaism and anti Semitism, unequivocally condemning manifestations of hatred toward Jews and Judaism as a sin against God. The Catholic teaching about the Jewish people changed with the Declaration on the Relation of the Church to Non-Christian Religions in Nostra Aetate, proclaimed by His Holiness Pope Paul VI on October 28, 1965, writing, true, the Jewish authorities and those who followed their lead pressed for the death of Christ. Still, what happened in his passion cannot be charged against all the Jews without distinction, then alive, nor against the Jews of today. Although the church is the new people of God, the Jews should not be presented as rejected or accursed by God, as if this followed from the Holy Scriptures. All should see to it, then, that in the cathetical work or in preaching the word of God, they do not teach anything that does not conform to the truth of the gospel and the spirit of Christ. Unfortunately, the history of the church includes the blood libel, deicide, and persecution. Catholic anti-Semitism began long before the 20th century. For centuries, Catholics persecuted Jews, crowding them into ghettos, forcing them to convert to Christianity, and frequently killing them. For centuries, Catholics accused Jews of ritually murdering Christian children, engaging in sorcery, poisoning wells, and desecrating images of Christ. For centuries, Catholics were taught that all Jews were cursed because they had killed Christ, a position that was not officially condemned until 1965. And this was written by Stephen A. Allen, a doctoral candidate at the University of Notre Dame. And one of the most horrendous quotes about the Jewish people from the Catholic saint John Chrysostom, quote, the Jews are the most worthless of all men. They are lecherous, rapacious, greedy. They are perfidious murderers of Christ. They worship the devil. Their religion is a sickness. The Jews are the odious assassins of Christ, and for killing God, there is no expiation possible, no indulgence or pardon. Christians may never cease vengeance, and the Jew must live in servitude forever. And this was written uh, in the 4th century. And our anti-Semitism perhaps goes back as far as the Gospel of John. Perhaps you have taken part in a dramatic reading of the Gospel Passion narrative in a Palm Sunday service, in which members of the congregation take speaking parts, and the congregation forms the crowd, which shouts, "Crucify him, crucify him." Have you ever thought about the implication of the fact that a few minutes before you have been saying or singing as part of your Palm Sunday liturgy, "Hosanna to the Son of David, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord"? So it's possible that, quote, hostility was inevitable as the Jesus believing Jews came to see their movement as one distinct from Jewish identity. The split between the high and low Christology is explicit in John 19, verse 7. Quote, "The Jews answered him, 'We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die because he has claimed to be the Son of God.'" End of quote. This emphasis on a separate identity, this separation into us and them, is disturbing, ugly, and dangerous to most ears today. In John, the bad guys, the Christ killers, are the chief priests, the Pharisees, the Jewish police, and the Jewish crowd, the Jews. The Romans and Pontius Pilate are explicitly exonerated. The blame falls squarely on the Jews, who seem to have enlisted the Romans' help to avoid killing the man themselves, which would have been both illegal and caused ritual uncleanliness at the beginning of Passover. The Crusades from the 11th to 13th century, Jewish people were murdered by crusaders on the way to the Holy Land and in the Holy Land. During the Spanish Inquisition, Jews were persecuted, forced to convert, and expelled from Spain. What is anti-Semitism? According to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum Encyclopedia, anti-Semitism is the prejudice against or hatred of Jewish people. This hatred was at the foundation of the Holocaust. But it did not begin or end with the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism has existed for thousands of years. It has often taken the form of systemic discrimination against and persecution of Jews. Anti-Semitism has repeatedly led to serious and deadly violence against the Jewish people. So, what role does Christianity have? Um, Anti-Semitism is a set of hateful beliefs and ideas with deep historical, social, and cultural roots. Over many centuries, Christianity played a central role in the development and spread of anti-Semitism in Europe, where Jews have always been a minority. And the photo is of Martin Luther's church in Wittenberg, Germany, and it shows Jews suckling at a sow's teat and one at the rear of the sow. And this plaque at the Palazzo Salvadori in Trent, Italy, illustrates the supposed martyrdom of Simon of Trent at the hands of Jews. The blood libel in Europe, a false allegation that Jews murder Christian children so they can use their blood to make matzah, probably originated in England with the murder of William of Norwich in 1144, followed by accusations in Gloucester 1168, with St. Edmunds in 1181, Bristol in 1183, and Lincoln 1255. It rapidly spread like a cancer to the continent. Saint Edith Stein, Jewish-born convert to Catholicism who became a Carmelite nun and philosopher. She died in Auschwitz in 1942 as a result of the Nazi racial laws, declared a Catholic saint by Pope John Paul II. Stein refused to leave her Jewish heritage behind, embracing the struggles of the Jewish people as her own. When Hitler came to power in 1933, she requested an audience with Pope Pius XI in hopes of convincing him that Nazism was evil. When it was denied, she wrote to him instead, begging him to condemn Hitler. Pius, who later agreed to a controversial accord with the Nazi regime, did not answer. So in the 1930s, we see an agreement between the German Reich and the Holy See in Rome that was signed on July 20th, 1933, between the Reich, and we have the future Pope uh, in the center of this photograph. The Reichskonkordat, like all concordats, governs relations between the church and other states, in this case Germany. Its 34 articles confirm the recognition of the Catholic religion, freedom of ecclesiastical administration, the protection of religious orders and congregations, the regulation of sacramental marriage, and the guarantee of Catholic religious practice and education. Of course, the Nazis violated this agreement. Pope Pius XII was largely silent during World War II about the plight of the Jews. He never directly condemned Nazi Germany's atrocities. Some referred to him as Hitler's Pope. Adopting a stance of official neutrality, the Vatican refused to yield to the Allied pressure to speak out against the Nazis. And since everyone wanted to claim the Pope was on their side, political leaders weren't going to publicly chastise him or accuse him of cozying up to the fascists or Nazis, wrote David I. Kurtzner, author of The Pope and Mussolini, The Secret History of Pius the 11th and the Rise of Fascism in Europe. Pius's message of Christmas 1942 is now highlighted at Yad Vashem, specifically the statement in which he declares that, quote, hundreds of thousands of persons without any fault on their part, sometimes only because of their nationality or ethnic origin, have been consigned to death or slow decline, end of quote. The New York Times editorialized, this Christmas more than ever, he is a lonely voice crying out in the silence of a continent. The National Shrine of the Little Flower Basilica in Royal Oak, Michigan is shown there. My parents were married in this church. The famous radio priest, Father Charles Coughlin, was the pastor there from 1925 until 1966. Father Charles Coughlin's anti-Semitism linked Jews to the creation and spread of communism, an ideology he hated. Throughout his career, he told listeners that Jews manipulated the economy, railed against the international bankers and money changers of the world. To the parish's credit, the history on the website includes this description. In the turbulent social atmosphere of the 1930s, Father Coughlin's weekly radio program began to move from religious topics and focus on controversial issues of national and international politics and economics. His political involvement and passionate rhetoric gradually became overtly anti-Semitic. After being silenced in 1942 by the Archbishop, Father Coughlin continued to serve as pastor until his retirement in 1966. In 1933, my aunt Jadwiga, Marie Baron, Ni Gwiazdowska, wrote a book called In the Clutches of the Jews, which was a quote from Hitler's agent. In that book, my aunt describes her trip to Poland and her descriptions of the Jewish people, their intelligence, and their aid to her and help with her career. Unfortunately, at the end of the book, my grandfather, who had always blamed his business failures on the quote international conspiracy of Jewish bankers, end of quote, his religious and ethnic theories appeared in the postscript to In the Clutches of the Jews. Probably no race has been subjected to such long and almost continuous harrying and persecution as the Jewish people. That was to an introduction that someone else had written, not my grandfather. The book claimed to be a repudiation of German anti-Jewish fascism by giving examples of a young woman's, quote, record of her actual experiences with the typical representatives of this remarkable race, end of quote. The book ends with my grandfather's words, "Will Hitler and his followers save Germany's hungry and unemployed? No, they represent the hatred and so must perish. It took Jews a few generations to ruin Imperial Russia. Hitler's Germany will be ruined in our days. Mutual extermination may start soon. Evolution sometimes uses war, revolution, and even massacres as tools to accomplish the desired results. The Jews are an ideal instrument of social evolution." My aunt's book and my grandfather's words upset me. Why would someone with my grandfather's opinions risk his life and his family's? I kept searching for more proof about what happened during the war. So, Suwalki, Poland is shown on a map of Europe. It's the red dot below Lithuania and the northeast quadrant of Poland. And a picture of the Gwiazdowski family in Suwalki, Poland, about 1941. Agnes, top left, Alexander, top right, Basha, bottom left, and Richard, bottom right. And here's a map of Poland in 1939, showing prior to the Nazi Soviet pact being violated, that the Soviets entered Poland from the east, the right, and the Nazis entered Poland from the west on the left. There are two stories my mom repeatedly told about growing up in Nazi-occupied Suwałki. The first was when she was 12 years old. Her father, Alexander Gwiazdowski, posted her outside the house to be a lookout against the Nazis. He was in the resistance and had an illegal radio. It was a capital crime for a Pole to have a radio. She saw the SS and Gestapo's men walking down the street. As instructed, she tried to warn her father, but the door was locked. She pounded and pounded, but he couldn't hear her. This is a picture of the house where it happened on May 17, 1941. Days earlier, 150 other underground members were arrested. Most were high school boys and girls. They included Richard, my mom, Basha's 16-year-old brother, my uncle. The Nazis arrested Alexander, her father, in front of her. He was charged with treason for possessing the radio, smuggling Jews into nearby Lithuania, and organizing an armed resistance. She wouldn't see him again for 5 years. Alexander was taken to the Gestapo headquarters where he was beaten and then confronted by the leader of the local Polish underground. And present was a Gestapo officer, a psychologist, and an interpreter. Nearly a dozen other Gestapo agents came in the room. They accused him of leading the underground group, smuggling Jews, organizing and supervising courses at an officer's school, and other charges. Each were a capital crime. Alexander was transported to Wartenberg prison in East Prussia, awaiting trial. He was convicted of treason, and his death sentence was commuted to 7 years. And until he escaped on a forced march in 1945, he spent his days and years in this prison. After the war, he wrote a book called I Survived Hitler's Hell. The other story my mom often told was that when she passed the homes of her Jewish neighbors, she ran because she was afraid of them. She never explained why. This story that I recounted to a scholar on World War II suggested that I dig into that story, that it was very significant. I did. I reread my grandfather's book, I Survived Hitler's Hell, and the dedication struck me differently. It was more ominous now. To the Jewish martyrs abandoned by the rich co-religionists and rabbis. That sentence made me doubt the stories of heroism I had been told. And the fate of a Jewish Pole was much different than the fate of Catholic Poles. Of the 9.5 million Jewish people living in Europe before World War II, the Nazis murdered 6 million Jewish men, women, and children. My friend Marilla Feld's entire extended Jewish family of 60 were murdered. The entire Gwiazdowski family of Catholics survived the war. According to independent Polish scholars, 1.8 to 1.9 million non-Jewish Poles died as a result of the German occupation policies in the war. The total population of Poland was 35 million before the war. Less than 6 months before my mother died, she told a story to my brother, my wife, kids, and me. It was a story she had told before, that after she and her mother fled to an area of Poland near Krakow, after her father was arrested, she missed school and her classmates were taken for slaves to Germany, where they almost all died. On this day, she told the story differently. In this version, she told us that she had been at school when the Nazis came to make slaves of the students attending school. In this telling, my mom said she hid. She had never told the story in this way. Through tears, she revealed that for her entire life, she had felt guilty about surviving when all her classmates had died. My grandfather wrote this book under a pseudonym in 1953, 8 years after the Shoah, the Holocaust. Hammer and sickle over the Capitol. The cover of the book has a large-nosed, black-haired caricature of a Jewish man. The body of the snake is coiled around the capital of the U.S. There are hammers and sickles on the snake's body. The foreword to the book states, "We must destroy this diabolical conspiracy hatched by agents of social corrosion." Later in the book, he writes, Quote, "For the first time, I noticed the names of the convicted spies, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, Sobel, Gold, Copland, Greenglass, and many, many others." A fictitious Professor Angel claims, "One group, the Jews, has refused to assimilate with any nation. They form a nation inside another nation. These groups are the corrosive agents." I wrote my own memoir about my family's wartime history, listening to Chopin while fighting Nazis. I concluded that my grandfather was both a hero and an anti-Semite in ways that I still find hard hard to understand. So the road ahead. Learn more at Yad Vashem at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. And the U.S. Catholic bishops have a number of writings on anti Semitism. Thank you.